Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Men's Health Panel. Some of you may believe that the men out there will be interested in this panel, and some of them will, but the majority of the men out there will not be interested in this panel. Reason being is because men, a lot of us, kind of take a out-of-sight, out-of-mind approach to our health care. And so this test, you may be more successful in marketing it to the females in the relationship. Okay, so let's get right to it. Who needs this panel? Pretty much all men who are interested in their overall health and their partner or someone that cares about them may be interested in their male companion's health. Men that have a general feeling of unwellness, a low libido, male pattern balding, weight gain, enlarged breasts, high blood pressure, fatigue, or sleep problems, also a loss of strength. So this panel is a great additional panel to offer to men, or it also works as a standalone, works real well. Now this panel focuses on 11 different SNPs, and there's three main areas it's going to focus on, and that's going to be the testosterone metabolism, metabolic risk factors, and hypertension risk factors. A lot of focus is on the testosterone and estrogen hormones in the male's body, because the testosterone and estrogen hormones can wreak havoc when they're not right, and it really can screw somebody up pretty bad. Metabolic risk factors, go into that, and the hypertension risk factors. Let's talk about the SNPs that we're going to look at for the testosterone metabolism. Now again, remember, the SNPs are those mutations, genetic mutation, and whether or not they're dominant or recessive alleles, like we were talking about in the previous panels. So you'll notice a couple of these SNPs that we're looking at here are the same ones they look at in females for a couple things, but not all of those female-associated mutations do they look at here. Let's talk about the first one. You guys can read it, right? But I'm going to just go through it. CYP19A1, all right? And what this SNP is referring to is a mutation where this particular gene, if it's screwed up, will increase the risk of producing estrogen. Estrogen is normally produced and processed in the male body, but this is going to be an excessive amount of estrogen can be produced if there's a mutation here. And those signs of increased estrogen or excessive estrogen production will show up in men with growing man breasts, okay? They also, you can see this emotional issues, it's no joke. Men will get overly emotional if their estrogen is off. So they'll be crying at TV commercials perhaps, or just when they're watching American Idol and they see that Lane Hardy one, okay? Also acne will show up, weight gain that's not really that normal, and a general unwell feeling. So this is a great panel for somebody that just has a yucky type feeling. We're also going to look at the SRD5A, and what this gene is responsible for here from this mutation is a conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which is basically a super pumped up version of testosterone. And if there's a increase in testosterone production and it doesn't get processed correctly, it can also lead to baldness, right? Increased body hair. So it kind of can do both things. It can make them bald prematurely, or it can increase the body hair, give somebody a deeper voice, and it also increases the risk of prostate cancer. The CYP1B1, this is going to deal, there's two different hydroxyestrones that they deal with here in the test, and that's number 4 and number 2. So CYP1B1 and CYP1A1 respectively. So again, the 4-hydroxyestrone, it's going to give you stronger, it produces more estrogen, and not just more in quantity, but a stronger estrogen. And so if this thing's out of whack, definitely will notice it in the sex life. low to no libido gynecomastia. If you guys know what that is the actual scientific term for man breasts. And also increased abdominal fat. Now you'll notice right below it, the CYP1A1, same side effects with these mutations. It just deals with a different type of estrogen. Now the COMT, this is very important because you'll see this word methylate a lot in these tests, and what this is, a mutation discusses the methylation of that estrogen. So methylation, as you know, is very important. It's what helps absorb these chemicals and these hormones. And anyway, so the COMT has the same side effects as these other ones. So you'll notice a pattern here. This testosterone SNP observation here is on several different SNPs, but the side effects can be the same. So it makes it very difficult to actually narrow down when a guy has these symptoms or these side effects, issues, whatever you want to call them. It's like, no kidding, he's producing more estrogen. He's got man breasts. Now, of course he's producing more estrogen, or it's not handling estrogen correctly. That's not good enough. You need to find out where is the problem happening. So that's what these SNPs will talk about here. So you can narrow it down, then treat it correctly. Now the GSTP1, this is how, you'll see a big word here, mercaptorate and mercaptorate clearance. And what mercaptorates are is when people are involved to environmental toxins, herbicides, pesticides, cleaning products. These actually turn in to bad things and can cause cancer. It's a scientific fact. Environmental carcinogens, cleaning products, those types of things, chemicals at work. Guys are doing guy-type jobs in the shops using certain cleaning chemicals, or just cleaning around the house even can get exposed, and they can actually get these carcinogens in their body. And this GSTP1 actually is one of the gene mutations here that will deal with how the body processes those. Next part of the panel is the metabolic risk SNPs, and these should look familiar if you remember the Women's Health panel. It's missing a couple from the Women's Health panel, but it's concentrating on the ones that are important for the men and the male anatomy. So the FOXY1, this is regarding thyroid production. So if this thing's out of whack, men can actually get hypothyroidism. So they look at that. They also look at these ATG5 and 16L1s. These are the autophagy-related genes. Remember from our previous panels what autophagy is? Autophagy is how your body gets rid of garbage at the cellular level and recycles that garbage and proteins and so on. And autophagy will be the next panel in the series, because autophagy really affects so many different systems in our body. And so it's very important. It's one of the building blocks of genetic testing. So we're going to get to that one next. But for today, just to review, autophagy is how your body gets rid of that cellular garbage. But these two SNPs that they're dealing with are going to be talking about diabetes, insulin resistance, error there, gestational diabetes. Correct me. I'll correct that. I just copy and pasted. Again, PCOS wouldn't apply either, of course, but fatty liver disease would. And so this mutation, though, again, is easily treatable with medication. We're going to go right into the hypertension risk SNPs here. Again, the ACE and AGT. And if you recall from the last panel, what these two genes and their mutations deal with is blood pressure regulation. Okay, so hypertension is caused by high blood pressure. And so to avoid that, you have to monitor that blood pressure, and so a lot of these treatments will be to reduce salt intake. Remember, the ACE deals with the enzymes that are produced in the lungs, and the AGT deals with the enzymes that are produced in the liver. And again, kind of funny, I think, how our blood pressure is regulated from several different systems in our body. So this is a very important section of the test, because blood pressure too high, problems, and cardiovascular disease, of course. So far, for the men's panel, you see we focus a lot on the testosterone and the hypertension, because if you look around you, men in their 40s and 50s and so on, that's when this stuff starts to show up. Okay, that's what they call the widowmaker here, hypertension. So 11 SNPs were looked at. So now let's go ahead and review the report. Same cover sheet as before. All right. This is I guess a male. This is a sample report. It's a male, and you can see that we have, again, our green and our tan and our red. I believe that's supposed to be actually yellow, but our green and our yellow, tan, whatever, and red. And the green means there's no abnormality in that SNP. And the heterozygous results, if you recall, it's going to be one dominant and one recessive characteristic on that gene. And then the homozygous results, remember, are going to be two dominant characteristics. So pretty much a guarantee. All right. So the first section of the report deals with the testosterone metabolism and estrogen production and convergence and conversion and absorption. So we talked about these SNPs, these genes here. So it looks like here that this 19A1, this person is for sure producing more estrogen than necessary. And that excess of estrogen can also, along with those environmental toxins, are also putting the person at risk to develop cancers. Okay? So they typically will treat this with an aromatase inhibitor. That's what the big word is here, to deal with that estrogen production. And so on all these reports, it's the same layout, just looks at different SNPs, and we'll have a therapy that's recommended, and then they have a therapy that's highly recommended, and then we'll have a discretionary column, and we'll have a lifestyle recommendation, and some more laboratory recommendations, more testing that they would recommend. And just like the last reports, this is what will always show up in the block, regardless of the color coding. As you can see here below, the SRD5A1 is green, and it's good, but if it was a red, they would use these as therapies. So that's why it's, again, very important for the doctors to interpret these reports. So let's take a little closer look. So that estrogen production here is a huge issue for this male, and this person's going to have all kinds of problems if it doesn't get corrected. And aromatase inhibitors, you can see some of these other things they're looking to prescribe. Now, again, if they give more than one medication, they'll typically recommend a PGX test as well. Also, the lifestyle recommendation is very interesting here to me. They're actually recommending that this person learn a little bit. Okay, they're actually recommending that they dig deeper on their own, ask questions of their provider, and study. And it looks like they also would recommend some kind of a blood test here. All right, so we're good on that page. Got that under control. Oh, wait, one more thing. You'll notice that on some of the reports, the names in this column and the names in this column won't always be the same, or this may be a shorter list than this list, but this person here is messed up, okay? That's what this means. This person is screwed up big time, probably very emotional, probably people are noticing this in people, not just their physical appearance, but by their behavior. People are definitely noticing this. Someone probably came up to this guy and said, you need to get tested because you're a hot mess. All right, so both of these columns are identical, so that means that their therapies that they recommended with pharmaceuticals and whatnot are definitely highly recommended. It's unusual to see this. If this is bold, that means you need to really look at this provider. Okay. Now let's go into the FOXY1, and that looks pretty good, right? But look, here we go. We've got some issues in our autophagy. Okay, this ATG5. So, again, some therapies, some highly recommended therapies, and look at this. They're repeating this, because even though this is a yellow or a tan, whatever you want to call it, it means that there's the one dominant, one recessive, they do have a chance. But you put it together, this gene here mutation and this gene here mutation, this right here is going to pull this down into here. So these two genes are definitely got some issues. So they want to stimulate that metabolism, because they probably here is looking like they want to try to speed up the metabolism here, try to speed up that autophagy process. And they'll monitor that, because too fast of a metabolism is not good for you either. Okay? And so over here, look at the lifestyle recommendations. They have an increased risk of this diabetes type 2, so this person is probably overweight. That's why they're recommending this metabolic stimulators. And obviously, common sense, calorie restrictions, and even fasting. And of course, what goes along with borderline diabetes people, as well as people with diabetes, they always recommend routine glucose testing. All right, and watching the A1C. But it looks like this person may look like they're good to go in the hypertension risk category, but even though it's not a red, they're still at risk, for high blood pressure. And they'll notice that especially when they start monkeying around with their blood sugars and monkeying around with the guy's metabolism, because they may overstimulate it. They may affect other parts of the system. So what this testing is supposed to do is to reduce the chances of, just having to keep changing this person's medication for blood pressure, or for, just trying to get his metabolism under control, get his body under control. Instead of just trying different things, throwing it at the wall and see what sticks, they're trying to actually narrow this down here to help this person. Then at the end of every report, again, remember, we get our summary. And so if the person doesn't want to go through and read everything in these pages, because it is a little overwhelming, they can go here and get a quick peek, and it looks like, they'll go to their doctor. The doctor will say, hey, wait a minute, they got some recommendations here for an aromatase inhibitor. So let me dig into this. And so then that physician may not be as up on the genetics, okay? So he'll actually then consult his colleagues to make sure that he can actually read this report correctly. We get calls from doctors asking questions. We talked with a doctor yesterday in Florida that is going to be jumping on board our program, and we're going to actually do some training with him so he can make sure he correctly reads these reports, and so that way he can make the proper recommendations. Again, these recommendations, they're not given lightly. Okay, they're not just again, throw it against the wall, see what sticks recommendations. So it's important, though, that if you take your report to the doctor, if they don't know what they're looking at, that's not going to help the patient. So they need to consult, and they'll make phone calls. And there's resources that we can provide those doctors to get some answers, get some medical references, and why they're thinking this and why they're thinking that, and put them in touch directly with the lab if necessary to go ahead and get them squared away. But we've got the highly recommended therapeutics, okay, and we've got the lifestyle recommendations, and again, it pulls from that report and kind of gives them a summary here, and some lab recommendations. And you'll notice that this is not DNA testing or genetic testing recommendations. Are actually saying this guy, in addition to the genetic testing, needs to get in there and get some blood work, okay? Then with the reports, didn't go over this last time, but I decided to add it in this presentation. We'll actually give them a definition sheet, so that it will help the doctor and the patient to actually decode this report. Okay, so that is the presentation for the Men's Health. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.